Hello and welcome to the 41 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney III, from the fighting city of Newtown Square, Pennsylvania. I want to say thank you to Wilson. As we get to Omaha, they will be the proud sponsor of these podcasts. I want to encourage everyone, when you get to Omaha, check out the Wilson Omaha experience over in the Village. It is awesome. The swag is swaggy. It's very, very swaggy. It's so good. You can make a glove. I mean, they're just, their gear, their stuff is so awesome. So I want to encourage you to get over there. The Wilson Omaha experience over in the Village, right next to the stadium. Speaking of awesome and elite, I'm joined by Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt, and they are awesome and elite. Gentlemen, it is Omaha Eve. We will all be on planes for the heartland, the promised land of college baseball tomorrow. How are we feeling right now? Aaron J. Fitt, let me start with you. How are we feeling?
Runes, I am fired up. I'm ready to go. I'm still in the process of packing, so maybe I'm not that ready to go. But we're working on it, man. We're working on it. I can't wait to see you jokers face to face.
No. I said this to somebody recently. I said, you all are part of my life every day. Like every day we're in these, chats and talking college baseball, but we see each other in person, like not that often. Just on pictures like this. KR, you have kids. Like, how do you possibly get ready for this trip?
This will be surprising to you guys. My wife is even shocked, but I did actually pack today. So, yeah, it's impressive. Usually I pack like the morning of, like an hour before my flight.
Wow, well done.
So, it does beat last year. The morning of Omaha, we had just moved into our new house, and my pool, for whatever reason, backfilled onto the golf course. So yeah, that was not a good morning travel experience. Much calmer this year, I hope.
Joe Haley properly pointed out last year that my pool flooded onto the golf course is one of the most ridiculous rich guy sentences of all time, but we like it.
We'll allow it. We will allow it.
Hey, I'm only making like 0.03% of what Tony Vitello is making. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Tony V got himself a nice race, being the number one overall seed 2 out of the last 3 seasons, 3 Omahas in 4 years. How
about the Balls? Let's start there, Runes.
Knoxville. Talk to us about Knoxville, Kendall.
The Balls in Evansville. This is an interesting series in the sense that you had a number 4 seed in Evansville, Wes Carroll, his club going to Greenville. Winning that regional was really impressive. Not easy with the jungle and the crowd there, the intensity to get a regional win there. They get the regional win. They go on the road to Knoxville. They lose the first game. Tennessee played really well in the first game. Or they lose the first game and they win the second one. I just thought when you look at Evansville as a whole, I mean, I get they kind of ran out of gas in the third game. A lot of that was just, Blake Bird, Billy Amick. I think Billy Amick's ball is still going from his home run in that game. That was an absolute blast. Christian Moore over the weekend, I thought it was impressive how he got banged up early in that series. We're all kind of, in our group chat, we're all kind of wondering like, hey, like, is he actually hurt? Like, is he in bad shape? What's the deal here? And what does he do? He comes back in the final game. He has a multi-home run game. So I thought, it was impressive how Evansville played in the game they won. I think Ty Rumsey, I want to say, I think that was his last name.
Yeah,
Ty Rumsey, the center fielder for Evansville. I thought Tony's press conference when he talked about him was really cool. That's one of the best plays I've ever seen. And for him to do that and take the ball right off the kisser and just shake it off is really impressive. Mark Schallenberger, I thought, if you looked at his numbers throughout the year, they were really good. But I think America was kind of introduced to him. He was really impressive in the postseason. So I thought Evansville looked prepared. They just looked like a team that ran into a buzzsaw in that final game. And I give the Vols a lot of credit. It would be really easy after the things they've kind of gone through that we all have well documented, at least at home a couple of years ago. They were on the road last year, but at home a couple of years ago, for them to get in a situation like that and go into game 3 and go, oh, here we go again. Like all the pressure's on them. Like Evansville has no pressure in that game. So I thought it was impressive just the way they played in that moment. So Tennessee, just a really professional-like performance throughout this postseason so far. And frankly, I expect that continued going into Omaha. Xander Seekers in that final game was a 1 run and 6 in the third innings. They've got it rolling right now, guys.
Yep. Fitzy, you want to any thoughts on Knoxville?
Yeah, no, I think Kendall nailed it. I mean, I was impressed with Evansville's showing. I mean, you're up against a
Yeah.
juggernaut, a superpower on the road in an impossible place to play. And the fact that they won a game there, pushed to a game three. I mean, there were only 2 game threes in this super regional weekend. Really was kind of,
Mhm.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a controversial statement, guys. I think it was kind of a dud super regional weekend. It was very chalky. 6 of the 8 home teams won. Only 2 series went to 3 games. I mean, there were a couple of games that were close late, but there's some blowouts, and it didn't really captivate me.
Peyton Kim would disagree with you.
Well, that was
Eli Serrano maybe disagree with you.
yeah. I mean, hey, listen, there were some highlights, of course there were, but like I feel like every year, like, oh, this was the greatest super regional weekend ever. Like every year we say that, and this year, you know what? It wasn't. It was fine. It was good,
Yeah.
but like it was not the greatest ever. It was very kind of chalky. It was just kind of chalky. But anyway, that said, Evansville forced it at game 3. At Tennessee. I mean, come on, that's just Tennessee is so good, and they're so good at home. Hats off to Evansville. That was good for them, but hats off to Tennessee. I mean, they're awesome, and they're looking very terrifying heading to Omaha.
Yeah, I agree with what both of what you said there. That Kendall, that game 3 could have gotten really spooky in Knoxville and Tennessee. First of all, Christian Moore just thankfully recovered quickly and was him. Remember, he ended the game that they lost. Like he had a chance to win that game for Tennessee and couldn't do it. And so it was good to see him looking like himself. He's one of the best players in the country when he's right. And so Tennessee really showed all the right makeup to win that game 3.
And frankly, they showed all the right makeup to be a team that, as we look ahead to the College World Series, can roll through this thing and win the national championship. Especially with the way the bracket unfolds with the day off, I think their pitching is just fine here. Obviously, their offense does rely on the long ball a little bit, but as we've seen throughout the year, it doesn't matter if you're playing at Schwab or you're playing at Lindsey Nelson. The ball's carrying, the ball's leaving the yard. So I don't, this is not old school Charles Schwab Field. So I think their power kind of approach is going to work just fine here, and they've got more than just power. They can go in the gaps. They can be really aggressive at times. So I think as Tennessee looks ahead, to me, they're the favorite in this thing. I think every team in this field can win the College World Series, no question. But I do think Tennessee's the favorite. I just think I think they're the best overall team.
I think that's fair. I want to say one more thing about Knoxville, and then we'll go to
Sure.
Tallahassee. Evansville, just as you all said, we've been doing this format for 25 years. Only 9 times has a team done that, been a 4 seed and win a regional. And so, Evansville's team, this is well documented, but they were 3-18 in the Valley in 2018. Like, think about that. Wes Carroll had been the coach there for a while, and they bottomed out in 2018. And this group of older players helped Wes Carroll, just revive a very proud program. Like, Evansville's had a number 1 overall pick in Andy Bennis. They have Kyle Freeland in the big leagues. The Jim Brownlee era of Evansville. When I was at Notre Dame, they were our arch rival. They were gnarly. They were so good and so well coached. And so I just thought for them to go into Knoxville and trade punches with Tennessee, the best that you can, really. I don't disagree with you, Kendall. They would be my pick to win it all. Let's go to Tallahassee. So I'll do that one. Let me put myself on a timer here. I just, this one was kind of indicative of what I think you were alluding to, Fitzy, where Game 1 was very disappointing, 24-4, something ridiculous. Game 2 was all that, though. Game 2 was just awesome. UConn in the end couldn't pull it out. James Tibbs just took over the game. 5 hits, 3 home runs. He had really scuffled in the regional round for his standards. And, Florida State, I just think is very interesting because I could argue they have the best game coach still going. I think if you had to manage one college baseball game, I'd have a tough time not picking Link Jarrett. Now, of course, all these guys are great coaches, but Link, man, this is there's a savant there, in my opinion. Jamie Arnold, I think, is the most talented pitcher still pitching in this tournament, starter at least. And then, James Tibbs, you could argue, is the best pure hitter left in this tournament. All that's arguable, but certainly you can make those cases. So, Florida State, I think, is very viable heading into this thing. They don't have tremendous pitching depth, but as you alluded to, Kendall, the days off could really help them. I wish their bullpen was a little better, but man, was Connor Whitaker good in this thing, and that helped them. One thing I want to say about UConn is just, what a cool story. Second super regional in 3 years, third super regional in the last 15 years. They go to regionals every year. It's way up north, as you know, Fitzy. And like a story like Luke Broadhurst, right? They cut Luke Broadhurst, and Jim Penders in his post-game conference talked about it's the hardest recruiting call I've ever made. Coach Josh McDonald said, we need you to call Luke Broadhurst. He could help us. He just won a Division III national title at Eastern Connecticut State. And, Luke Broadhurst was a baller, like just a stud. So Connecticut we saw the real Connecticut in game 2, and that was really, really fun. So go ahead, Kendall. What speak you about Tallahassee?
I think my biggest takeaway from this super, and frankly, as we go into the College World Series, is just how much of an avalanche that Florida State's lineup can be. You think back to UConn. I mean, they have one of the premier pitching coaches in college baseball, and Josh McDonald. He always has those guys ready to roll against Oklahoma, who, by the way, is a pretty offensive team in their own right. They give up 6 runs in 3 games in Norman with the wind blowing out and things like that. They go on the road to Tallahassee. Not only did they give up a 24 spot, granted, some of those runs, honestly, were against bottom rung of their bullpen, but they give up 24 runs and they give up 10. FSU scores 34 runs in 2 games. We talk about so much about James Tibbs for obvious reasons, but when you look at this lineup top to bottom, man, it's just like once they get rolling, it's just like a freight train. Like it's impossible to slow them down. So I think kind of looking ahead to the World Series with FSU is you cannot let these guys get off to a hot start, because if you do, like trying to play catch up at Florida State is extremely difficult, I guess, unless you're Clemson in the middle of the regular season. But for the most part, trying to play catch up, especially in that venue, is going to be more difficult, I would say.
I will say this too about their position player group. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's an awesome lineup from top to bottom. They can hurt you everywhere. But the thing that I think gets maybe overlooked a little bit is they're a really good defensive team. And last year they were a really bad defensive team, and it was shocking because Link Jarrett coaches defense so well, and they put such emphasis on that. And they harped and harped and harped and harped on it all summer when they were building their roster, and all fall and winter and spring. And you look up and they're fielding 979, which is I think the third best fielding percentage in this field of 8. Behind only Kentucky and Florida. So, I mean, all the work paid off. They're playmakers. I think Daniel Cantu is really underrated at first base. He saves those guys a lot. I mean, he's I think a really good defensive first baseman. Cam Smith's improved at third, but obviously bringing in, Alex Lodis and Drew Farrow in the middle has been huge for them. They're just solid. They're very solid all over the place, and that's been a huge, huge part of their turnaround.
Love it. Fitzy, take us to Charlottesville, please.
Yeah, so we had Kansas State and UVA, and I thought that the first game was pretty compelling. Really, Kansas State was game. I mean, we knew they would be. I mean, they're well coached, they're tough, they have star power. There's a lot to like about that team, but UVA just kind of asserted their will there. And I think it was the 7th inning, really the middle innings. I mean, Kansas State was in control early. Or in the lead early, I should say. And then it's just hard to keep that UVA offense down, and they kind of made their run there in the middle innings and took control with 3 runs in the 7th. And Evan Blanco was good, I mean, overcame a little bit of early adversity and gave him 7 strong innings. I mean, that's a huge piece of this UVA story this year is the way that they're starting pitching once again has just kind of, it's not going to overpower you with stuff in the rotation. That's not who they are. But they have found a way to get quality starts, pretty consistently. Yeah, especially from Evan Blanco, who's again, I mean, it's an 88-90 lefty with a really good changeup and enough feel for breaking ball. It's not going to blow you away, but I mean, he's got pitchability, and we've seen that a bunch this year. I mean, I was at that game in Chapel Hill to jump ahead, but Derek Clark and Chase Bragg, I mean, these are same kind of guys, pitchability lefties, 88-90, good changeup, whatever. That still wins. That still plays in college baseball. And so I think we sometimes can get caught up on stuff. Oh, UVA doesn't have enough stuff. I mean, look at the numbers, guys. I mean, they're pitching fine. I mean, they've really gotten it done. Team ERA, I mean, it's kind of in the middle of the pack for this field. It's not nothing special. It's still not the strength of their team. But the bullpen has gotten better. They Matt Augustine at the back, obviously, real weapon there for them. And they just kind of, I thought Saturday they kind of, again, they asserted their will, if you will. I mean, won that game pretty handily. They're just clearly, as I said in the ACC tournament, they're scary. That offense is just scary. And I thought they looked like they were dialed at the right time of the year. in the ACC tournament, and then I foolishly picked against them in their home regional. I thought Mississippi State had better pitching, and guess what? It doesn't matter. I mean, it's just like having stuff is nice, but I mean, you got to get outs, and it's hard to get outs against Virginia, guys.
KR, what say you?
Yeah, kind of along the same lines as that. I think in our podcast going into the postseason, we just kind of wondered how they would pitch, and I think they've allowed 12 runs in 5 games. That's pretty good. And so this is a team that's obviously going to hit in Omaha, and obviously it looks like right now they're pitching at a pretty high level. So I think as you look at Virginia, I mean, I know very few people are going to pick them to win this whole thing, but I mean, it would not shock me if they went through this tournament and won the national championship with the way they're playing right now.
I think it's 20 runs in 5 games. There was 12 runs in the regional in 3 games, and then 8 more in the
Super.
It
was okay.
Yeah.
Well,
but still, I mean, pretty good.
I was not a math major.
Hey, and I would say Kansas State. They mentioned them. Like Virginia was clearly felt like the better team, but Kansas State didn't like that. That was not a yawner by any stretch. I mean, Kansas State really pressured them deep into games, and it just Virginia's roster just felt deeper. That's what it felt like to me. That like Kansas State stars could play with anybody really, and they were able to play with Virginia stars. Kalen Culpepper. I thought Fitzy, I'll let you be the judge of this, but headed into Omaha, I don't know if I can get pre-credit, but I thought saying that's a hot Culpepper, I thought that was the pun of squeeze play. Matt Schick may disagree, but I thought that was really well executed by yours truly.
You really think you can hang with Schick in the dad jokes category? You got no chance. You're out of your league.
Yeah, his Evansville, just, onslaught. Yeah. But I would say, with Jay Woolfolk, these 2 good starts in a row, like that changes the equation for Virginia. And like you guys mentioned, Augustine, I maybe I just caught a good game, but watching him on squeeze play, man, that's a real arm. Holy heck.
Arm.
Yeah, like it was.
There's some big young arms in this field of 8, that teams are relying on that have proven to be mature beyond their years, and he's a big piece for them.
Yeah, the freshman arms in the ACC that was a special group. So really interesting. Yeah, I'm with you. Like you just like you guys, I'm doing a lot of radio hits right now for people that are just playing catch up. And like for me, the Virginia position player group is just so eye popping. It looks like 9 kids that were first team All-Americans in high school football. Like they run, they're big, they're skilled, they're athletic. I mean, just like insane. And Griff O'Farrell, by the way, had a really nice super, and I thought that was really important for Virginia.
I mean, if you're heading into the College World Series and you have the best defensive shortstop in the country anchoring your infield, you got to feel pretty good about that. It's a really good place to start. And then, of course, they're hitting 336 as a team, guys. That's insane. With power, they led the ACC in home runs. I mean, it's in that ballpark. It's one of the more pitcher friendly parks in the league, and I mean they hit for average and power. It just doesn't matter where they play. Who's going to stop them right now? Like that's the question. I mean, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, special collection. So Kendall, I'm going to have you do North Carolina, and I think I'm going to force you to start with. Boy, does Mike Monaco deliver? I mean, boy, this guy does not call.
His home run calls are fantastic.
Yeah, and how about the drama he creates from the play-by-play seat? Goodness,
the most handsome man in college baseball.
Yes. Talk to us, Kendall.
I am jealous of Mike Monaco for being in Chapel Hill the last 2 weekends. He saw some awesome baseball. I think the biggest thing for me when I look at North Carolina is when you look at teams in the postseason, and I think of A&M along these same lines, right? Where you're put in situations to where it's like it's not looking great, right? North Carolina is one of those teams that, when they won the regional against LSU the way they did, beating that juggernaut of LSU, that mystique of LSU the way they did, I thought it was just ultra impressive. They come back the next weekend and again in 2 tight games just played an incredibly high level, man. Like their defense was awesome. Like Vance Honeycutt, like we all know how great he is, right? But like America now knows how awesome that guy is, both offensively and defensively. You look at the job that, DeCaro did in his start against West Virginia. That was ultra impressive. And whether it's, Dalton Pence or Matthias or whatever, what the job that those guys did out of the bullpen. I just think North Carolina, at least on that side of the bracket, to me looks most like the team that seems to have everything kind of going their way a little bit. Like Tennessee, they overwhelmed Evansville in their final game. Florida State, they just roughed up UConn. North Carolina just has a feeling of a team like they can't find a way to lose. And when you go to Omaha like that, you just kind of wonder a little bit, like, are they a team of destiny to some degree?
Yeah, and I would say, first of all, I want to comment on West Virginia. We're going to miss Randy Mazey. Now he'll be a college
Yeah.
baseball dad. His son Weston, the Whammer, is going to be. I think he's at 25, but he'll go play at West Virginia. And this was a vintage West Virginia deal where their roster's depleted by injury. They don't have their closer David Hageman, and yet they're sitting there coming down to the final pitch against North Carolina in a super regional game. And JJ Weatherholt wasn't even like his normal self in this super. But man, the West Virginia program, they get more out of less than anybody that I can think of right now. It's just really incredible. I enjoyed that team very much. I would say with North Carolina, it just feels like an SEC roster. And I don't mean that to be pejorative to the ACC, but it's just like how do you get those kids through the draft, right? Like Stevenson and Honeycutt. I mean, they're big and physical and athletic, and DeCaro has got future first round pick written all over him. And then you sprinkle in Shea Sprague, who's, pitched a million college games. But I do think I love the position player group for North Carolina, but I would argue the two best bullpens in this College World Series field are actually North Carolina State and North Carolina. Now, I haven't gone all the way through that, and, A&M's injuries maybe have something to do with that. But I'm telling you that those four dudes in that North Carolina bullpen, Dalton Pence, Ben Peterson, Matty Mateus, and Matt Poston was ridiculous the night he threw. And so, I'll turn it over to you, Fitzy. But man, if you don't have a lead on North Carolina in the fifth, good luck with that.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think, a winning formula because their starters, they're strike throwers, DeCaro and Sprague. And then if they need a third starter, Aiden Houck's got good stuff and can get you to the fourth or fifth or whatever. I mean, they got enough length in that rotation. I mean, DeCaro might be 1-1 in 3 years. I mean, it's that good of an arm. As a true freshman who enrolled early, he's what he showed me, in the second game against West Virginia was six strong innings, whatever it was, 2 hits. I mean, he was awesome, guys, for a true freshman in that atmosphere. And Sprague's just like ultra reliable. I mean, I'm telling you, that guy's going to play. It's going to play in Omaha. He'll pitch to contact and whatever. He can miss bats with a changeup, but he's just like every week out. He's been kind of the linchpin of their bullpen, but I mean the rotation. But like you said, I mean, they shortened the game so much with that bullpen, and that wound up being the difference. As much as I think West Virginia's pitching was up to the challenge this weekend. I mean, Tyler Switalski threw the game of his life in the second.
Yeah, how about that?
Power lefty, good stuff, and he held UNC at bay. And then the guy they brought out of the bullpen after that was very good also. And then of course the first game you had Derek Clark. I mean, pitching to the ninth as he always does. Yeah. Hey, Derek Clark's one of my favorite college players. I mean, come on.
Period.
He's literally Aaron Fitz-sized, and he's just like a horse, and he's their horse, and they ride him. He went 9 innings like 5 or 6 times this year. They weren't going to take the ball from him, but they probably asked a little too much, entering the ninth with 133 pitches, and it looked like he blew out of gas. He grew to first pitch, I think fastball, if I recall, to Stevenson, who hit it out to tie the game, and then of course Honeycutt walked him off against Aiden Major. I mean, they're it was a fun series. I'm with you. I really like that West Virginia team a lot. Hats off to those guys. Great year, great run. Elevated the program, first super regional. But North Carolina, I think, feels like, I mean, quietly one of the favorites here this week. I mean, it's because of the bullpen.
They got that feeling for sure. I mean, here would be my question as somebody who's seen them a lot. Like I'm watching them and I'm like, where is their weak link?
Yeah.
I don't really see like a weak link.
They don't really have one is the thing is, I mean, if you look at, even at their lineup, like it's not like, you can beat them with a righty or a lefty. They go right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, switch, all the way through. You can't really match up with them. They have obviously speed with Honeycutt and D'Onofrio and, some other guys who can run, Madeiron, Wilkes at the bottom, whatever. They have power. They have guys who turn the lineup over at the bottom. They play great defense. They defend better than their field percentage says. And especially this guys in Omaha, it's still a big ballpark, still spacious gaps. You got the best defensive player in college baseball in Honeycutt, whose range is insane. And then you got D'Onofrio, who might be the best defensive right fielder. I mean, his range is insane. You got 2 like plus are who are going to steal a lot of hits in that place. I think that's a huge advantage in this ballpark.
Amen. Yeah. Fitzy, take us to Lexington, please.
Yeah, this one was fun to watch. I mean, coming into it, I thought it was two teams that had pretty similar styles, Kentucky and Oregon State, as far as their position player groups, where you have power certainly, but they felt like balanced athletic teams that can beat you a lot of different ways. And Kentucky just went out there and shut Oregon State down, guys. I mean, 3 hits allowed in 18 innings against Oregon State. I mean, that's a very, very talented Oregon State offense. It's not just Bazana. I mean, that's a really good group of position players. And they just blew them out 10-0 that first game. And it was like, hey, whoa, well, you figure, okay, the Beavers will bounce back. Let's see what they got. And they had their chances, but, Kentucky's clutch pitching just came through. And we wondered a little bit about at times, their bullpen this year. I thought their bullpen, watching that game, whatever day of the week that was, the second game of that series. I mean, I thought their bullpen was awesome. I mean, Cameron O'Brien was great. Robert Hogan with that, really good slider, cutter, whatever it is. I mean, then you had Hummel at the back getting the last out. I mean, they got enough arms back there. They got guts. I don't know. I mean, that to me was my question mark about Kentucky. And I mean, it was a small look, but I liked what I saw back there. And again, a team that we know can really defend. We know they can manufacture offense different ways. They don't have to rely on the home run. And here's the thing, guys. Balls are flying out everywhere. You can hit the ball out in Omaha. It's not 2013. But like, if you're a team that really relies on the home run, you could still be in for a rude awakening, because it's not gonna play like, all these ACC and SEC venues, which are almost all bandboxes. Let's face it. It's a lot of home run.
It's not 310 to right field.
Yeah, and and we like to pick on Lindsey Nelson or whatever, but I mean, like, all these SEC and ACC parks are small for the most part. Kentucky's is not, Virginia's is not. But and those teams they're built, I think, to Kentucky can beat you a lot of different ways. They do have power, but it's not like a team that relies overly on power. So I'm very intrigued to see the way for them. I just think it's about handling the weight of it, first time in program history getting to Omaha. That's usually, we've seen it. I mean, first time teams, Coastal Carolina won as a first time team, but it doesn't happen very often. And Coastal Carolina maybe didn't have quite the baggage, I would say, historical baggage that Kentucky's going to bring. I mean, there's going to be a ton of Kentucky fans there. There's got to be pressure. That's, to me, is the major X factors. How are they going to handle all that?
Yep. Kendall, go ahead. Your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll say this about Kentucky's mindset is I watched their post-game presser on YouTube, and like, I was crazy impressed with just their demeanor. Obviously, they were ecstatic to win the Super Regional, but this didn't look like a team that felt like they've accomplished everything they want to accomplish. It seemed like a very determined club. So I'm with you. I will be interested to see that, but it did not look like a very content team just yet. And I thought that was really impressive. And I just think overall, I kind of feel the same way, just about like, where I feel as impressed with Kentucky as I did for North Carolina, the way they handled LSU a couple weeks ago, is for Kentucky. And I get this is not Pat Casey's Oregon State team. I get it. But to go against a blue blood like Oregon State, deliver an absolute haymaker in the first game. The second game, you got Travis Bazana coming up to still, and I get that he hit that ball off the wall, but to still be able to handle that situation, close that game out against a program like Oregon State that you knew was going to deliver one final punch and still win that game and close that thing out in 2, that's just really impressive, man. Like, it's not easy to do that against programs like Oregon State that is what they are built on, is playing well in those situations. So I'm just crazy impressed with the job that Nick and that staff have done. And Dan Rozelle, I mean, the job that he did, or the games that he called against that Oregon State offense to keep them at bay. Was it the first or second game they had one hit going in the 7th inning, I believe?
Well, game 1 they only had one hit total, and then
that's
game
incredible.
2, it was
So hat tip to Dan Rozelle. I just thought Kentucky looked like a very well coached team, both just fundamentally, but also very importantly mentally.
Yep. Yeah, and they play that fun style. I would say, like, I'll do Oregon State first. I think we all feel, like, we're not supposed to root for teams, but I will unabashedly say I root for Washington State and Oregon State, because this conference realignment nonsense left them for dead. And I applaud Oregon State. I wonder if it's the right move, but I applaud Oregon State for going independent next year in baseball. Like, that's gutsy, and it shows how much they care about baseball. can they pull it off? We'll see. But, like, man, under Mitch Canham, it's been tough. 2021, they lose game 7 of a regional when DBU advanced. And then 2022, they have, I think they were the number 2 or number 3 overall seed, and they lost a really tough super regional to Auburn. And then, this is, you're so close again. This stuff is tough, but it's all, I'm thinking about Clemson too, but this is part of growing your program, I suppose. And I don't know. Like you said, Kendall, Oregon State's such a special program for college baseball, and I'm worried about them.
Yeah,
Maybe I shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in the sense of, like, I'm kind of rooting for them right now, because
Yeah.
I think it's important to have a program like that out west that we can always kind of count on to be in the mix. And I'll say this too. Travis Bazzana hitting the ball the way he did in his final bat, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
He's been such a generational player in this game, and I thought he almost had that home run there. But I mean, just an absolute missile, just an awesome season by Travis. Happy to see Kentucky at Omaha, but man, I would have loved to see Travis in Omaha too.
Yeah, it's well said. I would say I'll put my bow on Kentucky is I just, their style is unique in this era, like you referenced, Fitzy, like power. It's funny. When you were saying that, Fitzy, I'm thinking, man, you can shank a ball to right field, to Foley Field, and get it out of there. Like now, Charlie Condon's ball wasn't shanked, but it was, like, it's just so short down there. And then, but Kentucky, they slug, but that's not their deal. And then, like, Trey Poozer has become this really awesome ace. Accidentally, and he's just pitchability. He held Oregon State down, and they were the number 8 team in the country in OPS. It wasn't like Oregon State was a bad offense; they just had a bad weekend. So, Kentucky. This is the thing that shocked me all year is Kentucky looked like a program with SEC pedigree. Like, they didn't look like some, SEC.
They didn't look like a one-hit wonder,
right? And I'll tell you, the crowd deserves some credit. Oregon State looked affected by the atmosphere at Kentucky Proud Park. Now, maybe they were just pressing, but man, I thought the whole scene for the second year in a row was awesome. Go ahead, Fitzy.
Just the fact that they packed 7,000 fans in,
awesome.
At Kentucky. I mean, I was at North Carolina, which is, blue blood that's been to Omaha a whole bunch of times and all that. It was a great atmosphere and stuff, but I mean, it's, record crowd, 4,500. The fact that you built this palace, the $60 million palace or whatever it is at Kentucky, if you build it, they will come. And you got that place rocking with 7,000 people for a program that had never been to Omaha. It was just pretty special, I thought.
What almost I kind of wonder with Kentucky is, can Minge have the same effect on that program as Tony Vitello has on Tennessee? Tennessee was a program that, like Kentucky, nobody ever went to baseball games. And once they started winning, you started getting more and more and more. Now it's like become the thing to do in Knoxville. So I'll be very interested next year to see if, like in Lexington, once basketball season's over, that it kind of becomes the go-to thing in Lexington.
Yeah, no, they certainly have the momentum to do it right now. Now the question becomes, will they have the roster next year? But hey, let me take us to Athens. NC State and Georgia. I'll do Georgia first. If you own Georgia baseball stock right now, do not sell it. Hang on to it, because they're not going anywhere. Like, I just think I'm very impressed with Wes Johnson. It's a very clinical approach to winning baseball. Like, they just don't have the roster yet. They had high points on this roster, but they just don't have a fully complete roster that you need to pull this off. And obviously the season Charlie Condon had, the season Corey Collins had, leading the country in OBP, and they were a little light on the mound, and Georgia's pitching staff just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking as we came down the stretch, and it just they ran out of arms, really. I think for NC State, I always think about Elliott Avent being one of the most enjoyable coaches in college baseball. And sometimes I worry that when you say that, it feels like a backhanded compliment. Here's why it's not. Because his staff is awesome. Like, Clint Chrysler is phenomenal with pitchers. And Chris Hart is maybe the most underrated assistant coach in the country, because they've got real dudes on that roster. Like, that NC State roster is perfectly constructed. You got a first-round catcher in Kozart. You've got Pennington and Makarevich, who are like incredible portal pickups, fifth-year seniors that keep the whole thing together. They've got all these spunky dudes in the middle, and Eli Serrano's all of a sudden hot. And you get these freshman arms in the bullpen, and then Derek Smith out of nowhere with this alien breaking ball. So NC State's a little non-traditional, but boy, is it fun. I mean, it's just an awesome roster. So, that was an interesting one. It went 3, but NC State's team is really, if you like if you like college baseball, you're going to love NC State's roster.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Fitzy.
And let me also compliment Clint Chrysler, because I think the job that he did, NC State's pitching coach this year, was remarkable, because I remember running into him early in the year. And he was just like, oh man, like how do we get outs now? It's just so hard. And like, it seemed like he was just distraught. He was in a dark place, and they figured it out. They just figured it out with the pieces they had. And, you got your couple of veteran guys who've been around forever, Sam Highfill and Logan Whitaker. Getting Whitaker healthy again definitely is a big piece for them. I mean, gives them three guys again. Not a lot of teams have three guys that can give you length. And they do. And, Fritten didn't this weekend, but I mean, on a given day, Highfill, Dominic Fritten, and Whitaker can get you into the fifth or sixth or deeper. And then you hand it over to that bullpen, and it gets late early, and so and the way that Clint Chrysler brought along those young arms, you mentioned them, Duden and Smith and Cooper Casiglio. I mean, then you lose Shane Van Dam, your main stopper, kind of before Duden, he was kind of like their main, like, middle innings guy. You lose him to injury, and they just keep on trucking. And so I just think that was super impressive. And, they're just, I agree with you. I mean, it's interesting that their two best players, I mean, besides Cozart, I guess, Cozart's their best player. He's their most valuable player, but gosh, I mean, the two graduate transfer, people want to talk about these ACC, SEC teams just buying players in the portal, blah, blah. No, I mean, we're talking about fifth-year senior guys, self-made guys. Makaravich, who was a good player for 4 years at East Carolina, but he wasn't really a star. And he goes to NC State, and they make him into a star. Like, he wanted it. You give the kid credit, but like, he himself will tell you, like, oh, these guys helped me a ton with my approach. And he's gone bonkers, and then Pennington, who's started at NAIA and went to Wichita State, and his fifth-year senior. I mean, and those are their two, like, most productive hitters this year. I mean, it's not like we're just going out there throwing these huge NIL deals around. We're just hitting on our evaluations, and then we're making guys better. And I just think that's cool.
Yep. Fitzy, Makarovich's his OPS this year is 300 points higher than his best year at East Carolina. And Garrett Pennington, I'll correct you just because it's so fun. Division II Central Missouri, go Mules. The Fighting Mules. Yes. Got to get some respect to the Mules. Go ahead, KR.
Yeah, I just think the two things that stood out to me from NC State, number one, Aaron kind of touched on the pitching staff. But the fact that they, allowed 6 runs in the 2 wins against Georgia. If you go look at Georgia, I was just kind of going through Georgia's schedule because I thought this was right. But I mean, if you go through their schedule and look at their home games, man, number one, very seldom were they only scoring that many runs in 2 games out of a weekend series. But most games at home in a conference series, they were scoring double-digit runs in every one of those games. So the fact that they were able to hold them to 6 runs in the 2 wins is ultra impressive to me. It kind of speaks to, as Aaron said, the bullpen, even Duden. I know he gave up a couple of runs, but he also made a couple of big pitches and big moments. And so
that strikeout at Condon with bases loaded, that was the moment of the series. I mean,
ballsy, man.
Enormous. True freshman and just wicked slider. Here it comes. Go try to hit it. Here it comes again. Try to hit it. Can't do it.
The other thing I really liked about this team, and I feel like I'm saying the same damn thing about every one of these teams at this point, but against Georgia keeps throwing punches. Trey Phelps and company, they keep throwing punches.
He was great.
In Indiana, why am I saying Indiana? In NC State, sorry guys, it is the postseason. We're running on fumes. I guess they are red.
Yes, correct.
And NC State, every single time Georgia would make just a little bit of push, whether it was Eli Serrano or whatnot, they were hitting a bomb into the trees or on the Kudzu Hill. Like, every time Georgia pushed, they responded in a louder way. So just the fact they were able to do that on the road just, kind of gives you an idea of the mindset of this team. Duden making the big pitch against Condon, them responding with these home runs. They're going to feel pretty confident going to Omaha. If you can go into Athens and do that to Charlie Condon, you can do that to anybody.
Yep. Amen. Kendall, recap the Clemson Super Regional for us.
You want me to grab this? I think it's.
Go ahead, Fitzy. Go ahead.
We'll give Kendall College Station since he was.
Oh,
there.
Even better. Yeah, because you were there. Perfect.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously this was a wild and wacky Super Regional. I mean, this was the one that probably was the most headline grabbing this weekend. I want to start with Clemson because, gosh, like you just said, if you have stock in Clemson, hold, hold, do not sell. They're obviously the trajectory of this program is up. I mean, once again, they were a national seed for second year in a row under Eric Bakich. This time they finally win a regional for the first time since 2010. Get that monkey off their back. And then, I mean, they fought, guys, and you give up a 7 spot to Florida in game 1, and they still kept fighting, and gosh, Cam Canarella, what a bad man. What a bad man.
How
I
about
mean,
the play to the injury? Oh,
well, I mean, just that catch in center field was absurd. I mean, it was like, listen, he got I think he got a bad jump on it. Like I think he broke in first.
Well, he was in because they had to be able to throw the runner
Okay.
out at home
Oh,
plate.
okay, I see.
Because it was the positioning betrayed him,
Got
and
it.
he just fixed it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was, straight over your head, like kind of looking back and forth, and then to run up the hill and jump and crash into the wall and hang on. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was one of the best catches I've ever seen. And then to follow that up with a clutch home run, I mean, just a baller, and that team I think does have a lot of heart. Obviously, the ejections thing, people are going to want to talk about that. The umpires probably need to do a better job controlling the game. Not letting, and I don't know. Listen, the first ejection, the Crichton thing, the collision, all that stuff that happened. I don't know. Maybe you guys have a better opinion on this than I. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that this is the headline. I want to talk about Florida. If you guys want to talk about the ejections, you can. I want to talk about Florida. I mean, they're very talented guys. I mean, we knew this all along. They're preseason number 2, and I think it kind of underscores the fact that we're seeing now what they're capable of. It kind of underscores how much they underachieved during the regular season. I know they played them one strength of schedule, but I mean, like only 30 of their games were against the SEC. I mean, they played 55. Like they didn't do very great in the other 25. But like once you get in, you get that second life, and it's like the pressure's off. And we're seeing it. We're seeing how good they are, how dangerous they are. And a big part of it is the young arms growing up, on the fly. And you're going to take some lumps sometimes when you're relying on some young pitching. And, and now when it matters, those guys are there for them. I mean, it's, Luke McNeely and, I thought he was really good. Obviously, Brandon Neely is kind of he's the dude. I mean, they rode him hard this weekend again, but I mean, they have so many power arms. They just have so much depth on that pitching staff. That's a huge strength. And obviously they're I mean, Caglione offensively is just it's special, but I mean, the pieces around him have stepped up. I feel like now, I mean, Ashton Wilson, I feel like he's had a really big postseason, and, Shelton had some big hits this weekend, and, they're Curland. I mean, they're some guys that have come through besides just Cags. And I feel like at times this year, their offense almost felt like a little bit of a one-man show, and which was crazy considering how much talent they have in that lineup. But I feel like they're getting more out of their entire order now, and I think that's a good sign heading into Omaha.
Yep. Kendall?
Yeah, just really impressed by Florida's play the last couple of weeks. I mean, whether it's Ashton Wilson, Caglione, Brandon Neely, the fact that he just kept trotting out there like he wanted to kind of seize the moment for them. He's been filthy in the postseason. Yeah, man, like I kind of wonder if Florida is the team that could very easily win that bracket. I mean, they're playing with such confidence. We obviously know they have really a lot of talent. And the thing about it too, the Omaha bracket is set up to where, Florida may not have the best pitching in that bracket, but everything kind of, you get a day off in between. So like you could, theoretically, bring Neely back every game if you really needed to.
Yep.
So if Florida plays the way they did against Clemson, the rest of this bracket could be in a lot of trouble.
Yep. I would say with Neely, like I'll be really curious to see how he recovers in Omaha. I'm not worried about injury. Don't take it that way, but I am worried about just general fatigue. Like he really has left it out there over the last 2 weeks. And I get it. He's 21 years old. Why am I worried about that age group fatigue? But man, it was like the first game of the Super, it was like you got no chance to touch this. The second game, it was pure guts. Like he was giving up loud outs, but he was still out there making pitches. And you're right, Kendall, like Curlin and Shelton have found a new groove. And, Ashton Wilson didn't have a hit until May 11th this year. His first hit was May 11th. And then he's most outstanding player of the regional and having these killer at bats. And I will just say this. I think, no offense, Charlie Condon, no offense, Travis Bazzana, I think Jack Caglione is the single scariest hitter in college baseball right now. Like I feel like Clemson tried to eliminate him, and he still had 5 RBIs. You know,
No respect for Colby Wilkerson. Come on, Reeves.
That's right. Maybe I need to Pat, edit that out. I'm just kidding. But I mean, Jack Caglione is just on a different level right now, and I think the kerfuffle he got into with Nolan Naraki is actually like awesome. Like, you know, it was awesome that it didn't lead to anything more, but like that showed me real like maturity in Jack Caglione, where last year I just thought he was a talented player trying to find himself. This year he's like, all right, boys, follow me. Like this is my team, and we're not getting clipped. So I just, man, that whole everything about it, the you know, the 9th inning home run by Canarella, or 10th inning, whatever inning it was, and the catch, and just back and forth. And Michael Robertson has found himself. I mean, you're right, Kendall. Florida.
I thought Florida like a month ago was one of those teams that once you got past like Colby and, you know, Cags, like I kind of felt like you felt pretty good about your chances of not giving up a crooked number in an inning. Now they have a lot of depth in that lineup. The other thing that I'll be curious, and y'all touched on this with Neely and just hit, you know, how much he was used over the weekend, is, you know, Cags was like 90-92 with his fastball against Clemson. And so I just really wonder, you know, how does Sully utilize him in Omaha? Does he almost kind of just keep holding him until he just has to use him on the mound? I'll be very curious to see what he does there.
Yep. Kendall, tell us about College Station, and I'm going to ask you a question. You could ignore the question, or you could whatever you want to do. Here's my question on A&M. Given what's happened last weekend, and you may know more about Shane Sadeo than I do. My question for A&M is: are they healthy enough to win the national title?
If they had to play a regional this weekend, I'd be a little concerned about them. Now that they're playing in Omaha, where you have days off, I think they'll be okay, because here's the thing. Sadeo's not going to pitch this weekend. He's done for the year, probably done for next year, which really is rotten because he's one of the top draft arms for next year. But when you look at A&M as a whole, you know, they're in a position now where, you know, obviously Prager was pretty iffy against Oregon, but you kind of feel like Prager's a great matchup for that ballpark. Like I'm actually fascinated for that Prager Florida matchup, because the way he keeps that ball low in the zone with the changeup and the slider matches up great with that yard. But, you know, obviously he's going to need to be better. But I mean, the thing about A&M now is they've gotten to the point where Chris Cortez has been unhittable. Yeah. And they're in a position now to where, you know what, if Ryan Prager gets in trouble then against Florida, we'll just throw Cortez out there, because go look at what Cortez did against Florida in Gainesville earlier this year. He was unhittable. And so, you know, Cortez is kind of the security blanket, like the ultimate security blanket. And then on the back end, you know, you got Evan Ashen back. So, I mean, for A&M, you're still feeling pretty good. And the thing that I'm very curious about with them, and this is going to sound funny to some degree, but like with Braden Montgomery's injury, I don't think it hurts them as much offensively as it does defensively, because in a ballpark like Omaha, if you hit a ball down the line or a ball to the wall to right field, like that's a single against Braden Montgomery. That is not a single against Jay Salvalette. So I think what Braden's injury does, because he really had knocked the cover off the ball the last month of the season, I think what it does, it makes A&M's margin for error much smaller across the board. And so I think he really not having him hurts him defensively, but a little bit like we were talking about with North Carolina, even Florida to some degree, this team just like every single time you think they're down and out, they've got something, right? Like against Oregon, I mean, Oregon's just hitting beach balls up there the first few innings. You know, Brock Moore gives them just a sliver. They take it, and I mean, what happens? The guy who replaces Montgomery, who never hits home runs, cranks a 412 or 13 foot home run, grand slam, ball game over. So they're just one of those teams that, like, when somebody goes down, something happens, like you just always expect them to step up. And Hayden Schott, I mean, this is a guy that was playing with a knee brace all weekend, and he might have been their best hitter against Oregon. So just ultra impressed. And real quick on Oregon, I do want to give this some credit. We talked about it in the Super Regional preview pod. Once again, man, these West Coast schools, they get out of the Pacific Northwest, and it's like, you know, it's like their eyes get big. I really, really liked Oregon's offense. That's not the offense I saw at Globe Life earlier this year. And Anton Aras, just a really nice player, man. Like, just great approaches all weekend long. You know, you look at, Drew Smith up the middle. I really like their offensive lineup. Obviously, they just kind of ran out of gas. Mullen, their lefty, was out this weekend, this past weekend with an injury. That killed them because once Moore got in trouble, I mean, they really had nobody else to go to with Mullen out. So they really hurt their matchups. They used Logan Mercado in the opener, 70 pitches. That's the one thing, if you go back, I don't understand why they did that, because they threw Mercado 70 pitches and he was effective in a game they were down by 4 runs. I'm not calling A&M the world beaters, but you're probably not catching up with A&M if you're down 4 runs in the 7th at home. Probably not going to happen. The percentages are against you on that. So had they been able to go with Mercado right out of the chute when Grinzel exited the game, maybe that game turns out a little differently. But, there's so many times in the postseason that you can go, we talked about North Carolina LSU last week. Well, what if they were playing in? What if they were playing out? Like, there's so many situations in the postseason you kind of second guess all that stuff. But at the end of the day, going back to A&M real quick, they're just a really impressive club, and they're relentless. They're relentless. Some teams have to knock them out. They're not going to beat themselves.
Yeah. Boy, I have a lot of thoughts to add to what you said. You made a lot of interesting points. One thing, hey, we talk a lot about the bullpens in the postseason. I bet on bullpens in the postseason. Oregon's bullpen was exposed. A&M's bullpen proved once again that it is elite. I mean, I could see Cortez being, I always go back to like a Riley Farrell or like a Josh Spores, like one of those guys, like a power, just shove it in your face, come and get it guy that just like adds the hit. It just creates a legend in Omaha. I could see Cortez being that kind of guy just because he's peaking at the right time. The stuff's electric, and then you mentioned relentlessness for A&M. Even without Montgomery, they lead the nation in walks. I mean, like number one, and I just think that's a skill that travels no matter where you're playing. I mean, yes, they also have a lot of home runs, 4th in the nation home runs per game. But I mean, they're always on base, and so even if they're not hitting the ball over the fence, you kind of like your chances when you got a couple guys on base all the time because you're constantly drawing walks. And so I think that combination of the on base ability of the offense, and then just the excellence of the bullpen, even with the Sadeo injury, even with the Montgomery injury, I just think it gives them a real puncher's chance to take home that trophy.
Yeah, the other one quick
Kendall.
thing on Cortez. Well, I was just going to say one quick thing on Cortez. I think I tweeted this out, but it probably got lost in the shuffle. But on Cortez's, I think 92nd pitch in relief over the weekend was 100 on his 92nd pitch. So it just gives you an idea that just his slider was 89-91, his changeup was 90. Just gives you an idea of the ridiculousness of this stuff is right now.
Yeah, that's insane.
While you were saying that, Kendall, I looked up his when you were saying that, Fitzy, the reliever for Virginia, Griff McGarry. Am I doing that right?
Griff McGarry's another one. I was saying Josh Spores, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, same. I mean, kind of like a lightning bolt armed reliever who just finds his groove. So last 4 outings for Cortez, and I know this has been documented, but 13 2/3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 29 strikeouts, and he does walk people, but it's not ridiculous. It's like 7 walks. So it's like, it's 2 strikeouts in innings. He's giving up a hit every 6 innings, which is ridiculous. 3 of the 4 outings, he didn't give up a hit. So you're right, Kendall. You've been banging that drum for a long time.
Well, Waz is kind of funny in the postgame presser. Waz just like straight up said, like, dude, we don't see that in the Pac-12. Like, if I'm being honest, like we have not seen an arm like that all year long. And so
who has?
Yeah, that is a good
like Hundo.
A 91-mile-an-hour slider with a
I mean, it's
fastball.
It's basically, what it is this year's version of what Chase Burns was last year for Tennessee out of the bullpen at the end of the year. It's that kind of lightning stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Boys, well done. That was good. We have checked the box. We will put a super regional capper in the hopper, and then we will board planes for Omaha tomorrow. Excited to see you, excited to break bread with you. And excited to see the great people of Nebraska. So again, want to say thank you to our friends at Wilson. Do not miss the Wilson Omaha experience over in the Village. You got to get to the Village anyway, and the Wilson experience.
Yeah, by the way, Runes, they're going to have a lot of swag over there. I was talking to the Wilson guys the other day. They're going to have a hat making station, so you can actually go in there and make your own customized Omaha hats. So we'll have to do that. I think Mr. Shock is going to do a little collaboration with them at some point.
can you make your own bucket hat? Is what Coach Rooney wants.
Oh, wow, boys! I got a little.
I didn't put that in the
appetizer.
contract. Technically,
Yeah.
I've not signed the contract, so maybe
Let's
I can
go.
just add
Amendment. Yeah,
that.
Fitzy and I are
Excuse me,
related.
I would
to
like an amendment on
attorneys.
the eve of the World Series.
Yes. I had this treat. I'll leave you with this. So I've been in Bristol for a while now. I'm home, but not for long. And Sunday morning, I had the pleasure of Jake, the great Jake Mintz, who we'll see in Omaha, biked. He was at a wedding in Hartford, Connecticut. How rando is this? He biked down to Bristol, and we had breakfast before the Sunday Super Regional games. It was delightful. It was the
I'll
perfect.
be impressed if he bikes to Omaha.
Oh, we should make that happen. Sounds like an activation opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. Sponsors, rise up. So, gentlemen, let's get back to packing. Everyone, enjoy the College World Series. If you're in Omaha, make sure you say hello and introduce yourself. And that's it. We will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.